Welcome in, Retriever fans. Latest edition of the UMBC Baseball Weekly Report with Coach Liam Bowen, recapping the week that was and looking ahead to the week that will be for UMBC Baseball, coming off a 1-2 weekend at Maine. Coach, thanks for taking the time joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave.
So, Retrievers coming in 1-2 this past weekend up at Maine. First conference road trip for the Dogs. 7-5, 2-5 in the conference. Just, Coach, give a quick recap of the weekend up in Orono.
Sure. Obviously, anytime you lose a conference series, that's a bitter taste. I think we're gaining a lot from the experience. We have a lot of guys on our team that have never been a part of America East baseball. We're learning our team as well, since there are so many positions where we don't have a proven America East player to put in there and solidify it. But guys are starting to step forward, and it's starting to be pretty exciting. I think just kind of going through the weekend, game one, we simply lost to a really good pitcher. Nick Sinicola for Maine was about as dominant as anybody I've seen in our league since Sean Newcomb for Hartford, who's in the big leagues and was a first-round pick. So hats off to him. He's clearly developed tremendously and just did a great job for Maine. And he was really tough on the two teams that he pitched against before us, and he'll be really tough on the teams after us. I don't think we're going to be unique in terms of him being a handful and tough to deal with. And then game two was another game where, coming out of the blocks from a pitching standpoint, we weren't as good as we hoped to be. We weren't competing in the zone as well the first half of the game as we needed to, and suffered for that. But game three, I thought our guys really responded. Luke Johnson had a great pitching performance for us. We got some timely hits and started to play the kind of baseball that we're going to need to play going forward to be competitive the rest of the way. So not a banner weekend by any stretch, plenty of things to work on and grow from, but I think you started to see guys adjust to the level and start to turn things in the right direction after a few games where we weren't as good as we should have been.
And then you mentioned Nick Sinicola in game one was dominant, lights out, but he's been that way all year. Talk about the way the team, you get to see that kind of pitching for some of these new guys in the league on the road. There might not be guys as dominant as that throughout the rest of the year, but what does that do now for these guys getting this first road trip taste of the America East, having to go on the road and play in this conference and having to, take these long bus trips, especially the longest one up there to Maine first, playing in this league?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and I think it's only going to make us better, being tested in this way. We have an exciting team. I think people have seen that with some of the comebacks we've had early in the year. We've had a handful of pitching performances that I think we can build on. I think we've shown promise in every phase of the game. We're just not a terribly seasoned team at this point. We're in the middle of becoming a more seasoned and established team. And sometimes those lessons are a little expensive, from a wins and losses standpoint. But the truth is, with Sinicola, just the way he was able to use his breaking stuff and to challenge guys with it, he's a pretty rare bird in the world of college baseball. I don't care what conference you play in. So I think kind of being held to the fire in that way and starting to compete a little better against him as the game went on. We were, got a great swing out of Christian Maceda to get us on the board, and I thought guys started to adjust to him. But that's why guys come to play at this level, because you get to play against the best in the country, and he's one of the best, and he had the upper hand this time, but we're going to get better because we get to face guys like that. And I thought on the pitching and defense side of the ball, we were a little bit unfortunate. I thought we were okay that game. Biggest play of the game was Reed Salata slipping on a bunt defense play, a play he makes, 99 times out of 100. And just unfortunate that he lost his footing, and it led to some runs that inning. But thought he pitched really well again, and we're going to be able to build on it, that side of the ball as well.
And then you mentioned getting some of these guys experience in conference play. You mentioned Maceda. He's come in. He was on the team last year, didn't play at all. Not a lot of people played last year, obviously, with only playing 10 games. But he had a solo home run there late in the game, get you on the board, like you said. Just talk about the way he's been performing. He came in, hit a grand slam in one of his first games as a retriever that he played in. Just talk about his progression that you saw when he came in last year to where he is now. Just always seems to take advantage of the moment and the opportunities that he's given.
Definitely, he can definitely put a charge into a ball. We've seen that. Obviously, saw that again this weekend. Not only was COVID a factor in him not playing last year, he also hurt his shoulder, and he's actually still continuing to rehab it from a throwing standpoint. And he's an exciting player. I mean, his highlights are up there with anybody's. He can run one out of the yard. He's a good runner, a guy who I think has potential to be a good base runner, potential to be a good defender as he gets experience. It's just going to be a matter of continuing to learn the level and be more consistent for him. But you're not going to find a harder worker. I'll tell you that. Like, he's a guy who's absolutely worn our cages out, and I think we've seen the work that he does on the side and on his own start to progress into the game. So I'm really happy for him, to see him get that kind of return on his investment there. And he's kind of a microcosm of our team in that way, Dave. He's a guy who can do a lot of exciting things and can show you some things that'll will get you pumped up. It's just going to be a matter of what are we going to do. And I'm not just talking about Christian, but what are we going to do in between these highlights? And if we can start to get kind of better in between the highlights, then we have a chance to have a really nice team.
And then another kid from the plate, Ian Diaz, had a 3-for-5 game on Sunday in the win, drove in 2 runs, scored twice. He seems to be very consistent from the plate. The guy, he's hitting over 500 this part of the season, slugging just under 1,000. He had a triple on Sunday in the win. Just talk about him coming in. He's one of these new guys to the program. What you saw in him, bringing him over to UMBC, and what he's really provided you so far this year, offensively and defensively on the outfield.
Sure. Ian, obviously off to a great start. I thought the triple that you referenced was one of the best swings of the year. It's a 2-strike swing off a good arm, absolutely pounded it into the backside gap. He's a talented hitter. That's something that we saw in the recruiting process, and a guy who probably didn't show quite all that he could do even at the junior college level. He was a successful junior college hitter for sure, but I think even had some room to grow here. And Coach Terrell and Coach Marsh have done a really good job with him honing his approach. He's done an awesome job of competing pitch to pitch. I think he's one of our highest IQ guys, one of our most focused guys when it comes to competing inside the game. And he's right now it's going pretty well for him. And I think one of my favorite baseball quotes is a Derek Jeter quote where he said, basically, our sport is about making the good times last and making the bad times short. And right now, his job is to make the good times last. And he's doing a really good job of it right now. But a guy that we always know is going to compete, we always know is going to be locked in, it's a total student of the game, and is becoming one of our more consistent guys that we can depend on for good at-bats for sure.
And you mentioned in the beginning, Luke Johnson on Sunday, 5 2/3, only gave up 1 run, the only run of the game. Had a couple of strikeouts, but the game before hit a pinch hit home run in the 9th inning. But he provided you a lot on the mound on Sunday in that win. Talk about him, coming in. I don't think he started. Maybe he did start a game or two earlier in the year, but just what you got out of him Sunday in that win.
Yeah. Honestly, we're getting what we expected. I mean, he's a guy that we were excited about in the recruiting process, and I thought had a really good fall. He was a little bit wore down from a throwing standpoint in the fall, so he didn't pitch as much in scrimmages. And then early in the season, it wasn't a matter of his ability. It was he actually got strep throat a couple different times, and in the age of COVID, that puts guys out for longer than would be typical in a typical year. So he missed a couple times throwing in scrimmages, but he's a young guy with a bright future. We were cautious with him the first couple weeks, and we're starting to kind of let the reins go a little bit, and it's exciting to see. He's a guy who, because of the competitor that he is, and because of his ability, he's able to be pretty good for us already in conference games, but he's got a ton of room to grow on the mound. I think he's only been pitching full time just for a few years, so there's a lot that he can still learn, and I know he will, because he's a bright young guy. He's a really hard worker, and we're definitely excited about him. And he can swing it too. Like he's definitely a guy who's going to have a future for us as a position player as well, just kind of depending on where he fits. So no, definitely somebody that we're excited to develop.
So going off of talking about Luke Johnson and the pitching staff, you had a good pitching outing this whole weekend. Pitchers seemed to be, there's a couple of miscues here and there. You talked about Salata falling off the mound that one time in game one, but you got to be impressed and happy with the way the pitching has performed thus far, and it only seems to be getting stronger as the season's been going on.
Oh, we'll get better. I assure everyone of that. Like, this is a pitching staff that's going to get better as we go deeper into the season. Maine was a little bit better environment to pitch in, if we're being fair. A little bit bigger stadium, colder days. We pitched in some tough environments early on, but mostly our guys are learning the level that they're pitching at, and we're learning them. Making sure guys are in the right roles, and we're going to have to rearrange it a little bit. Again, not having as seasoned a team, not having as many returning America East guys means that there's a little bit of flexibility there and a feeling out process. And there was always going to be the first 12 games. But there's a lot of individual guys whose progress I'm really pleased with. I thought Luke Wooten came in game one and was terrific. Brought some adjustments that he made midweek onto the mound, and I thought it was the best he's looked in our uniform. He's a really talented kid who's starting to come into his own, and we have a bunch of stories like that. Tyler McDonald was awesome in game three, got a huge punch out when we really needed it with the bases loaded through a 3-2 breaking ball that he had the conviction and the nerve to believe in, and that was great. Keegan Leffler, I thought, really shut him off those last couple innings when Maine was trying to rally. So there's a lot of good things happening. It's not a finished product yet, much like our entire team, but I think the people that follow us and the people inside our program can expect development and better performance as the season goes on. I'm pretty comfortable saying that.
And then just to start wrapping things up here, up at Albany this weekend, ending the 2-week road trip, talk about the Great Danes, what they're going to bring, what you have to do to come away with the series win up there.
Sure. Well, I've been coaching against Albany and Coach Mueller and his staff for now this is my 10th year, and you can always count on them to compete. You can always count on them to be a scrappy, tough team. Honestly, I feel like I say this every week, but all the America East weekends are kind of the same to me. They're all situations where if we play clean and we control our performance and we play our best baseball, we'll have a good chance to win at Albany. And if we don't, they're totally capable of giving us a hard time, because everybody in this league has talented players and everybody in this league is well coached. I don't think there's a soft spot in terms of coaching. There's not a team out there that's going to be unprepared. So, again, we usually focus on us. There's all kinds of video and stuff these days and analytics, and we take full advantage of that so we understand our opposition. But we're going to be hard at work at practice to do what we did when we were successful against Maine. I thought when we were aggressive in the strike zone, making routine plays defensively, I thought we were pretty successful, for those stretches of those games in terms of keeping them off the board. And offensively, we always seem to be able to create something over the course of the season. I think we've seen that. I'm pretty comfortable with our ability to score in different ways. So it's just going to be up to us, playing as clean as we can, competing in the strike zone, and we're going to get better at that as the season goes on.
All right. Well, Coach, all good. Thanks for taking the time again this week.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. So the Retrievers back in action this weekend up at Albany, Saturday and Sunday, 2 doubleheaders. And then they'll come back home next weekend to take on Hartford on Saturday and Sunday at Alumni Field. All the action will be on America East TV this weekend. And you can keep up to date with UMBC Baseball on the Athletics website, umbcretrievers.com, and the team's Twitter page at UMBC Baseball.